You're a manager or a team leader. You can't be unaware of what's happening in your team. You'll agree that when toxic behavior is left unchecked, it sends a message that such behavior is tolerated, leading to a decline in overall team morale and productivity. Moreover, your high-performing employees may switch teams or leave the organization for a healthy work environment, leading to increased turnover. Now, if you're in this position, here's what you can do to limit the impact of toxic employees. But before we get started, I'd like to welcome you to Empowerment Junction, where your journey to penning your best-selling story begins. Today, we are picking up where we left off on our series of episodes on a pressing issue: toxic workplaces. Many of our listeners have shared their experiences of working in environments they dread, and it's time to address this pervasive issue. I'm Olivia Bassi, your host and guide on this path of growth. With over 15 years of experience in teaching, training, assessment, writing, and product development, I've fostered a deep-seated passion for sharing knowledge and igniting curiosity. Empowerment Junction is your go-to podcast for actionable advice and inspiration to thrive, not just in the workplace, but in every aspect of life. Throughout this podcast, I'll be sharing my personal stories and equipping you with tactical strategies to grow and thrive wherever you are in life. Join me each week as we explore practical strategies and tips to navigate challenges, resilience, and achieve your goals. Now, if you're new to Empowerment Junction, I invite you to subscribe, like, and join our community of empowered listeners. And together, let's embark on a journey that's more empowered and a fulfilling life. Now, for those who are new today, I'd like to give you a glimpse of what we are all about. Here we discuss everything related to self-empowerment, personal development, personal improvement, growth, motivation, and how to navigate life's challenges with grace and ease, and much more. So whether you're looking to boost your confidence, enhance your productivity, or simply find inspiration to overcome life's challenges, you are in the right place. So if you enjoy what you hear today, I continue to invite you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. Together, we can create a ripple effect of empowerment that extends beyond these audio waves. Now, before we start, I'd like to share some inspiring toxic work environment quotes that can help you push through and maintain your confidence in the face of negativity. The first one is from Simon Sinek, who talks about leadership. Simon says, leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. And the second one is by Ronald Reagan. The greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He is the one that gets the people to do greatest things. And my last one, before we get started, is from Maya Angelou, who says, we may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. So in today's episode, I want to address the role of managers in limiting the impact of toxic employees. Now, without further ado, the first place managers need to go to is to document toxic behavior. How do you do this? Thoroughly detail what is going on to create a record should you need to take action against the employees. For starters, speak to all team members and ask them to share details of incidents where they experienced toxic behavior from a colleague. Gather emails and examples showing how the toxic employee undermines or offends their colleagues. At this stage, I would encourage you to resort to the employee handbook for guidance and look at the policies and processes. This is where your human resources or your HR becomes very useful, because you can go to your HR and check in with them, and they can guide you, or they should guide you on the policies, processes, and the employee handbook. Don't take action based on hearsay. Very important. Rely on proof to escalate the matter if you get to that stage. Now, you must be sure you're dealing with a consistent pattern of toxic behavior rather than isolated incidences like a momentary bad mood or a one-time burst off. Very important. The next place, identify the source of the problem. Now, once you've documented toxic behavior, contact the employee to understand the reasoning behind their actions. For instance, you may find that the person is working extra hours that they feel are unnecessary and venting frustration on colleagues. Or, if they don't have the appropriate skills or training, they could waste time in office or criticize others out of jealousy. Now, feeling threatened by a colleague's success can also result in toxic behavior like gossip or undermining others. The third place, find and execute solutions. After the groundwork, find a solution for the toxic employee and the team. Depending on the situation, consider whether remedial efforts can help. For instance, if you find the toxic employee snapping at others and generally demotivated at work because of poor learning opportunities, enroll them in workshops where they can upskill themselves, work on new products, and feel more satisfied. If such efforts are not helpful, explore the possibility of relocating the employee to a different project, role, or team. And I know this can be challenging if you're working in a very small organization. But you cannot leave this unchecked. You've got to have the conversation. Now, an example of how to do this, you could move this employee, or they could be moved from a high-stakes software development team to a legacy maintenance project where the interaction with their core team is minimal and the impact on important deliverables can be contained. Now, the fourth one, be prepared to make hard decisions. Remember, as a manager, this is part of your role. Even after communicating the problem to the toxic employee and executing a solution, the situation may not improve, and you've got to be prepared to have this conversation. If you find no change in their behavior, you may need to terminate their employment, and this is where working very closely with human resources is critical. It's a challenging step to take, but an important one if you want to protect your team and allow them to focus on their job without being traumatized by somebody's toxicity. Now, as a good leader or manager, one of your most important goals is to build a high-performing team that delivers consistently. This team needs to know follow-ups, is committed to the job, and everyone constantly learns and improves to raise the bar. Good leadership is more about having the right attitude than technical skills. Good skills can be taught, whereas attitude is developed over a period of time, and that's why you cannot leave toxic behavior unchecked. Now, the importance of having a leadership strategy is quite critical here, particularly when you're dealing with these types of employees. As a strategic leader, you will anticipate, influence, engage, support, and empower team members to respond to market and industry trends and customer preferences. In any businesses, the leadership strategy influences behavior. An effective leader will envision the future, make final decisions, collaborate with peers and industry leaders, and guide them to create strategies to achieve business goals. But we don't want to focus on that today. Our main focus is how to manage these toxic employees. And part of it is using the right tools to manage toxic people at work. Now, learning how to manage toxic people at work involves navigating complex interpersonal relationships and team culture issues. While technology alone can't solve this, it can help manage communication and feedback more effectively. Now, I would like to bring this to a quick summary for today's episode. Because part of today, we've explored the strategies that are critical for managers to handle toxic employees. And managing toxic behavior, as I keep saying, is crucial to maintaining a healthy work environment and ensuring team productivity. So the key points we've covered along with some examples are as follows. The first one is to identify the behavior, the toxic behavior. Recognize the signs of toxic behaviors, whether it's persistent negativity, resistant to teamwork, undermining colleagues, and poor communication. I've listed, my first episode did speak about these behaviors. So go back to that first episode and listen to it. As an example, it could be Jane, a project manager at your company, noticed that one of her team members, Mark, consistently criticized others' work and refused to collaborate on project. And this created a hostile environment and lowered team morale. It's important to identify whether there's a pattern here and whether there's a consistency here. And identify how long this has been going for. The second one, we've spoken about documenting incidents, and this means keeping a detailed record of the toxic behavior, including specific incidents, dates, and any impact on the team. Now back to Jane. Jane started documenting instances where Mark's behavior disrupted meetings and affected project timelines. She noted a specific example such as Mark's refusal to participate in team brainstorming session on, as an example, today is the 7th of June 2024, and what was the implications? This delayed project planning. The next strategy, which we've sort of discussed, is having a conversation. This could be private and direct conversation. Direct conversation is very critical here. And ensuring this is in a private space is also important. However, there is ways of going about this. I would recommend arrange a private meeting with the specific employee to discuss your observations or the observations that have been brought to you. Be direct yet respectful. Politeness is the key to this game. Focus on those specific behaviors rather than personal attacks. As an example, use statements such as I to express how their behavior affects the team and overall productivity. Now back to the example of Jen. Jen met with Mark and said, I've noticed that during our meetings, your comments are often critical of others' ideas, which discourages team collaboration. And this affects our ability to generate creative solutions. Now, in my previous episode, I did go a little bit into detail in terms of dealing with these types of employees who always have a negative thing to say. They're always criticizing, and there's a way of asking them politely what were they expecting to see from the project. So go back to that episode and listen to it again. This is part of that. But if you're a manager, you should be having this conversation. Private and direct conversations is very critical. Now, the next one, we've talked about setting clear expectations. Clearly outline the behavior changes you expect and establish measurable goals. Provide a timeline for improvement and offer resources such as training, counseling if required, because this is key. And this is where your HR becomes important. The employee guidance, the policies, the processes, revisit it and outline the expectations if needed. Now, Jane, again, set clear expectations for Mark, stating, I expect you to participate positively in team meetings and provide constructive feedback. Now, let's review your progress in, some may say a month. I would recommend every 2 weeks, depending on how often this team member meets with other team members. And you could make it weekly if this is it's becoming now quite a pressing matter. The next stage, follow up and monitor progress. Schedule regular follow-up meetings to review the employee's progress. Acknowledge any positive changes and address any ongoing issues promptly. Jane scheduled bi-weekly meeting check-ins with Mark to discuss his behavior. After a month, she noticed some improvement and praised Mark for his more positive contributions during meetings. The end of this, of the key aim here, is to remember you are a leader, you are a manager. Part of your role is not just to focus on the one employee who's been toxic, is to ensure that the whole team is operating as they should and they're meeting the key priority targets. And that's why it's important to come back if in this case, if Mark has improved his behavior, offer praise and commend him for improving and contributing positively. Now, the next one, enforce consequences. If the toxic behavior persists despite efforts to resolve it, be prepared to enforce consequences. Now, this may include formal warnings, and I would definitely make sure you're working very closely with human resources, reassignments, or even in severe cases, termination. Ensure that all actions are in line with company policies and legal guidance. And this is where it's quite important. In the UK, a lot of the times you have ACAs who can help you manage these sort of relationships. So it's important to check with your HR and understand the legalities and the policies that are attached to this type of behavior, and particularly when you're at the stage now where you feel you strongly have to terminate this individual's employment. Unfortunately, as an example, Mark's behavior reverted after some time. Now, Jane had to escalate the issue to HR, leading to a formal warning and eventually Mark's reassignment to a less collaborative role. Now, if you have to remember, as a manager, your role is to motivate the whole team, and HR is to come in and help you manage this from a legal point of view. And going to the last sort of area is to not forget to foster a positive work culture. Promote a culture of respect, accountability, and open communication within the team. I would highly recommend encouraging feedback and providing support to all employees to prevent toxic behavior from taking root. And this is where it's important to make sure that everybody is involved within those discussions. And you are meeting regularly to understand if it was a toxic behavior, you as a manager is not going to tolerate this anymore. And this is what has happened to the one employee who perhaps you've had to part ways with. For example, Jane organized team building activities and created an anonymous feedback system to foster a more inclusive and open environment. Over time, this helped improve team dynamics and prevent similar issues. Now, by taking these small steps, managers can address toxic behavior effectively, protect their team's morale, and maintain a positive work environment. And this is quite critical. Now, I have a case study here that I wanted to share because I worked with a business and this was happening. And this business, I don't want to say too much, obviously to protect my clients' privacy. It was a marketing agency, and that's my example. The creative director, who again I'm going to use an example, Sarah, noticed ongoing conflict between two members, Alex and Taylor. Their constant disagreements disrupted team meetings and project timelines, and this happens all the time. Now, Sarah, the director, documented their conflicts, noting specific instances where the arguments delayed decision making. Sarah held meetings with both Alex and Taylor to understand their perspectives and discussed how their behavior was affecting the team. She set clear expectations for more respectful communication and scheduled regular checkups. Now, despite initial resistance, both Alex and Taylor gradually improved their interactions, leading to a more harmonious and productive team environment. And this was a good way of making sure that the manager was keeping an eye or checking in with the behavior and making sure that all employees and anybody who worked within that company was made aware that toxic behavior was not going to be tolerated. And that's why it's important to list them down and document them and observe them if there's a consistent repetitive pattern here. So I hope these strategies have provided you tips and practical insights in terms of how to manage toxic employees. I know a few of you wrote to me as managers wanting to understand how to manage this area. And this is not easy. And as a disclaimer, I have been in this position, and I cannot say that my experiences were very reflect what I've discussed here, but they're very similar to what a number of us have gone through, having sat in a few boards now and having understood how toxic behavior can really impact on an organization, not only from financial uncertainty, but the whole team morale. And some people can take this home. And it's up to you as the manager to make sure that your team is more harmonious and productive. And that means that if you know this is going on, you have to root it out immediately. So I really hope that you found this helpful. And I really hope that you can be able to put this into practice. By all means, feel free to come back and write to me and let me know how this is going and if we can explore further. And again, as a disclaimer, these are my own practical experiences. I'm not an expert in this area, although I have explored this area in depth because I have been an employee, I have been a manager, I have been a leader, and I've experienced these types of environment. And in my situation, there's a number of work employments where I decided the best thing for me to do is to help my colleagues who I was managing to move on to new areas of employment, and I part ways with that company. And that's okay. That was my own values, which I had to really look into myself and think, I'm not going to be able to change this systemic, toxic environment. The best thing to do is I do care about the people I manage. I need to help them move on because I'd already made the decision to move on. So that was my exit strategy. And this, if you go back to my first episode where I talked about toxic employees, there is certain times where you have to realize very, very quickly that the type of environment you are in. And once I realized that, I started working on an exit strategy. So I'm going to stop there. But I really want to thank you for joining me on this episode of Handling Toxic Employees. And I hope you as a manager will be able to do right for yourself and for the people you're managing. Now remember, the strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. Stay positive and committed to fostering a healthy work environment. And I also like to encourage you to stay tuned for our final episode in this series of toxic workplaces, where we'll shift our focus and discuss how to handle managers who exhibit toxic behavior. It's a crucial topic that you don't want to miss. So I'd like to say thank you very much. My name is Olivia Bassi, and this is Empowerment Junction. Bye for now.